You're listening to the Run for Your Lives podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And this is the Run for Your Lives podcast.
This episode, we're covering Rampage, the 2018 American science fiction monster film directed by Brad Peyton, released April 13th, 2018. And the fun thing about this movie is, for the first time on this podcast, finally get to turn things a little bit on their head than some of these other previous episodes. And this is one that I saw back when it came out in theaters, and Daphne has never seen before until now when we are doing it on the podcast.
Yes, it did flip things around. I had seen, I think, all of the movies prior to this one except for one. So this was a different experience coming into this, especially compiling my notes and trying to figure out what I wanted to say.
Nice.
So we should probably do a little bit of the behind the scenes for this one, like we do with all of our discussions.
Yes, yes.
So, Rampage was based on the Midway Games video game series of the same name. It was filmed in Chicago, Illinois, and Atlanta, Georgia. Weta Digital provided the effects. The budget was between 120 and 140 million, and it grossed 428 million worldwide. It is the 20th highest grossing film of 2018, and it clocks in at about 107 minutes.
All right.
Pake, why don't you give us a synopsis of Rampage?
All right. Synopsis I got here is: when 3 different animals become infected with a dangerous genetic pathogen, a primatologist and a geneticist team up to stop them from destroying Chicago.
Well, destroy Chicago they did.
Yeah. At least it wasn't New York for once.
I know. It seems like we often go down the road of doing these movies where New York is the setting and gets pummeled or destroyed or blown up. And in this case, it was not the case.
Yeah.
So it was actually cool to see them go after another city.
Mm-hmm. Give New York a break for once.
Just for a little while. Just for a little while. We'll see what happens next.
Yeah.
What the next film, destructive film that we cover is. So, would you like to know what I thought?
Yeah.
Since it was
I'm
my
interested.
first time?
First experience with Rampage. I'm interested to see what you think.
Okay, well, though I think the backstory is a little bit lacking.
Mm-hmm.
I think the film is kind of like this action-packed adventure that really kicks off when the 3 animals are exposed to the pathogen.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I liked about it was that we didn't see, quote, Lizzie, the crocodile or the alligator. We didn't see her until like the last third of the movie. I thought that was fantastic, where we get this little glimpse at the beginning, and then she comes swimming in.
Mm-hmm.
I liked that. I liked that they kept that a secret.
Yeah, it was really cool. They teased her a couple of times, but then she gets her own huge kind of debut entrance the best way possible.
She totally does. Oh my goodness. I have some thoughts on her. There were a lot of things that I really enjoyed. There were some effects things I did not really think were very good. Mm-hmm. However, for the most part, I thought it was a fun Sunday afternoon watch.
Yes. That's the thing I think with this movie is we've done some other movies on here that are like big cult classics, or like movies that are like more cerebral, to where it takes a lot of thought on some things. And this is a Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson movie with plenty of your The Rock action sequences and scenes, to where you know what you're getting into with something like this, where it's not meant to be taken as seriously, and it's a great popcorn flick that you're gonna have a good time with.
You know what? I have to agree with that. There was a lot of action. There were a lot of great things, like I said. And it was a classic The Rock action flick.
Yeah.
I have a lot of thoughts on a lot of different parts of it. So I think we can probably just start diving into things.
Sounds great.
So we usually talk a little bit about characters.
Yeah.
And there were some quite colorful characters in this one.
Oh, definitely.
I have some definite thoughts on one of them, but I'm not going to talk about him yet. But I have a feeling we could. I think you may be on the same wavelength.
I think I know exactly where you're going.
Yeah, for sure. I think my jaw dropped during that, and I was blown away during that. It was kind of comical. Okay, so let's talk about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and his portrayal of Davis Okoye.
Yeah.
So we learn a little bit about him, that he was Army Special Forces. He's a primate specialist. He works at the San Diego Wildlife Sanctuary. He was part of the UN Anti-Poaching Task Force. And we learn a little bit also that he'd much rather spend his time with his dogs than and other animals rather than spending time with people, which I thought was cool. I think his buddy Nelson told us a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And I really connected with the way he was with the animals, using sign language, and he had a good understanding, at least from what I could see. Looked like his character really was invested in helping the animals that lived at the sanctuary, and I appreciated that as an animal lover, to see someone so engaged with them and trying to communicate with them. I really enjoyed that piece of it. I felt for him, though, when George gets exposed to the pathogen, and he ends up in the grizzly den, kills a grizzly bear, and gets injured in the process, and goes and hides, and then Davis goes in to talk with him, or communicate with him, about what's going on. He just had this really great way. The way that he played the character, I thought, was endearing, because the way that he was communicating with George, the gorilla, I really liked that.
Yeah, you could tell that he did really well of portraying this really strong bond between him and this gorilla that I'm sure who has been there. I mean, he's had him, you see, and you go to that kind of flashback later on in the movie where he rescued George as a baby, basically. And he's had him with him since then. I'm sure he just took him straight to the sanctuary and has been his closest friend and trainer. Not really trainer, but somebody who's taught him sign language and communicated with him and gave him company. And yeah, I mean, it's more than just a zookeeper and animal relationship. They really do have a strong bond.
Absolutely. I like, too, that there was a little bit of humor injected into that, because George actually gives him the finger.
Yeah.
And has played jokes on him. I really liked that. I thought, we don't really have this huge backstory, or the characters, they're really not completely developed. We learn little things here and there, but there's no real connecting with the characters is just not something that you can really do. I mean, they are who they are, and that's it.
Yeah, they brought in quite a few really interesting characters that then they just dropped off pretty quickly too.
Yeah.
It's a little disappointing on that, because you're just like the one that I'll kind of talk about mainly is Jack Quaid, his character of Connor at the beginning, where he's the new guy and George is kind of hazing him, playing this joke on him, and and so you expect, we're going to see maybe some growth in him. And then it's oh, no, he's just completely forgotten about and he's gone forever after the beginning of the movie, which is kind of sad because, I saw him because I love Jack Quaid mainly because I'm a huge fan of The Boys, because he's kind of him and Carl Urban are like the leads in that show in a way. He's Huey from The Boys. That's what I think of.
And you know who he is, like.
Oh yeah, he's the son of Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan.
Yeah,
which is cool.
It's pretty cool
because the just incredible star power of those names of his parents. But he's also like made a point to do his career on his own without their help and without their influence, and I think that's really cool.
I like that as well. And I had heard at one point that he wanted to change his name because he didn't want anything. He didn't want anything given to him. He wanted to earn it on his own.
Yep. He's the same age as me. He was actually, I just happened to be looking at stuff. He was born a month before I was. So.
Oh my goodness.
We're close. But then I'm like, that's really cool that somebody my age is doing all this. And then I was like, oh. But it's also like, man, what am I accomplishing? No, I'm kidding. I've got lots of good stuff going on. I'm proud of where I'm at.
You're doing a lot.
But I'm no Jack Quaid. I'm not starring on The Boys. No, that's fine. That's fine. I'll leave him to it. He does it really well.
That's a series I have not checked out yet.
So good.
I probably should. I know. I'll put it on the list. I'll definitely do it after I finish Blind Manor, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, to talk more about Davis is something I think we'd be diving into the story a bit more. So I feel like we should just kind of talk about some of the characters first, and then we can talk a little bit more about the story as we go. So other characters that we meet in this process include Dr. Kate Caldwell, who is played by Naomi Harris, who people may remember from a little movie called 28 Days Later, which is in 2003. Yes, it's been a while. So she's brought in as this geneticist. Her brother was suffering from a terminal disease.
Yeah.
And so she was working for Energene and using what I believe they called CRISPR.
Yes. Which is something I've actually followed for quite a few years, I think. So when the movie first started, I actually got pretty excited about that because I'd kind of forgotten. I haven't seen this since seeing it in theaters with some friends just like as a fun movie night. So, it's cool to dive back into it. So, that title card when the movie first starts and you're getting, CRISPR. And I know exactly what that is because, like I said, I follow that a little bit because it's a really cool thing. It stands for clustered regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats, which is a lot of big words that don't mean much of anything unless you have the context. So basically what it is, and she spells it out pretty well because I think, Davis says something about like, genetic engineering. She goes, no, more like genetic editing.
Yes.
And that's what it is these basically taking DNA strands and being able to pull out individual pieces that you want and you put new pieces in to where you completely reconstruct and edit, almost like film editing or sound editing. Editing this DNA where you're putting in different traits and different things. Some of them like controversial uses of it, like, what is it? Like with babies, for instance, people are, like creating like lab babies to where like, if they're still born, but like, like, I want their eyes or hair to be this color, or I want them to have this recessive gene or this trait or this. And like with stuff like CRISPR, you could do that. Where it's gene editing, and it's been around since the 90s with different, people, playing around with it. It hasn't been until more recent that people are making much more better strides for it. But of course, the best uses for it are for medical reasons is, different, these kind of diseases that don't really have a cure. Okay, well, what if we can just, certain people have different immunities to them or certain people are more. So, okay, what if we just take those kind of genes and splice those in? Or what about the genes that make you, more susceptible to those things? What if we just pop them out, And it's so it's really cool.
As you said, it's editing.
So yeah, I thought that was really cool that they went that route of using CRISPR as kind of the basis for this because like that's like a legit thing that really has some interesting future implications if done right. Also, could be very detrimental if used incorrectly, I think, in a lot of ways, but that's a whole like moral and ethical conversation that this podcast probably doesn't need to go into. But
well, it's interesting because she actually developed this system based on that, starting with CRISPR.
Mm-hmm.
she developed the system that rapidly transmits changes to every strand of DNA versus the one cell at a time model that CRISPR focuses on. And she was trying, like I said, she was trying to help her brother. But due to the number of combinations, changes are unpredictable. What she didn't plan on was Energene taking her research and her system and weaponizing it or turning it into something else, like not for the common good.
Mm-hmm. And I wasn't 100% sure on what they were trying to do with it, and I'm sure we can maybe talk about it a little more with when we get to like those characters and stuff. But yeah, I kind of got the idea it was like maybe like for military use or something. That's why this like Project Rampage is being able to like build these animals with like, you know, different like weaponized systems. But they didn't think it through too well.
No.
I was like, is it for military or just the highest bidder? They don't care. There's so we'll get to the Widens, I'm sure, but yeah, they're very...
we're going there after this, so...
Yeah, so I'll hold on to my thoughts for a second while we finish this, and then we'll get there.
Yeah. It seems that Kate spent some time in prison, tied to her work at Energene and leaving and trying to stop them from using the research and the system. So she ends up going to jail, but we don't learn that until another character is introduced and he spills the beans to Davis. And that causes a whole shift in the dynamic between the two of them.
Yeah.
But before we go to that character, I really think we've been touching on the Widens, and I feel like we have to go there.
Yes.
We have to. A brother and sister. He was polar opposite to her. She seemed like this steady hand, you know, really fierce, almost a shark businesswoman. Yeah. And he is a wreck. A wreck the entire time. And I found their dynamic to be interesting. She kind of calms him down all the time because he freaks out a lot. Yeah. But she's ruthless. Like, she thinks people should be liquidated. She's always got plans. She's just, right from the beginning, I did not like her, and I thought, okay, now I hope you get your comeuppance at some point, because you are not good.
Oh, yeah. No, it's, the way I looked at it is, I say the Widens plan, but really it is mainly just Claire. Brett's just kind of there for the ride, and he doesn't really know what's going on. But
he doesn't want to go to prison. That's all we know.
Yeah, he's complicit. You know, he's rolling with the, you know, and then we're gonna make a shit ton of money. You know, he's okay with the plan, but he's not the one to enact any of the action. That is her. And it's such a comic book villain cheesy kind of plot. Where it's like, oh, we're going to draw the monsters into the city with complete disregard for all human life and structural damage. And then we're going to let the military sort it out. And then we're going to take the DNA and then sell it to the highest bidder. Like,
and make a shit ton of money.
Yeah. That's...
You know, what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. And then when the FBI is tipped off from Kate, you know, they show up and Brett is just terrified. He's always eating something that's wrapped in a sleeve or a napkin. I noticed he's always got like a Hot Pocket or a little sandwich or something. He's a nervous eater. I don't know.
I think because he's so nervous all the time, maybe he's got a really high metabolism. I don't know. Just strange. Yeah. Strange character.
But I thought it was interesting how Claire then just jumps in to that moment as this just like, she's playing off the like concerned CEO so well, you know, oh, it breaks our heart. You know, it's terrible to know that our company is being tied into, you know, this terrible stuff that's going on. And I really hope that we can help save this. And, you know, you have our full cooperation. Look around the lab. And I really hope we get this sorted out. You know, it's diabolical the way that
she's a kind of a sociopath. Like the way that I'm not even sure if that's the right term I'm looking for. But she really knows how to snow people. Yeah. And I didn't trust her from the beginning. And him, I had no use for. Yeah. Not at all.
She's pointing the FBI towards Kate Caldwell again. She's like, her background with all of this stuff, and maybe she did something in this and this, and she's trying to get back at us for putting her in prison because of the terrible things she did, so she could be behind all this. And the FBI,
yes.
I don't know if they really bought it, because they still went through and took everything and cleared everything. We get Agent Park and his men, who, one of these FBI agents coming into these labs, I took great notice in. And so
You did.
It's one of those little nerdy moments for probably only me, but for anyone who doesn't know, I'm a huge AEW wrestling fan, All Elite Wrestling. Not a big WWE guy. I've moved ships over. Whatever you think about that, it is what it is. But
he has, folks. He's jumped off the dock. He's on the ship.
Oh yeah, I'm riding that Jericho cruise for the rest of forever. But yeah, one of the FBI agents that comes in is none other than Quality Time Marshall, as they like to call him, QT Marshall. Yeah, it was kind of cool. I was just like, that's friggin' QT Marshall. What is up with that? I wanted to try to take like a little video, but I couldn't do it with the way I was playing stuff off my phone. I was going to like replay that scene and like tag him on Twitter, but replay that scene of them coming out the elevator and then have his entrance music going as they're walking out.
No. Oh, Pake, that sounds like a little video project.
I might have to find a way to do that. Tag QT on Twitter.
I feel like we might have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's something we might have to. Yeah. Let's not lose sight of that. That's a project we can work on.
But yeah, so there's a random little catch that nobody else would make but me. But yeah.
Well, the Widens, they had this little group of mercenaries that Brett called Killers Are Us, and Claire referred to Burke as being the us in Killers Are Us.
Man.
And you think that Joe Manganiello is going to live a very long time in this movie. Mm-hmm. However, that is not the case. And a wolf named Ralph eats him and all of the members of his team.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that Brett is freaking out thinking, we have to get the wolf, Claire is not at all. She is tough as nails, calm as a cucumber. Well, the pathogen's doing what it's supposed to. And then, we see the wolf destroy a helicopter.
Man.
And eat people. And then continue on. When we talk about the monsters, which we will undoubtedly do, I've got some comments about that wolf. I have a few things to say about Ralph.
Yeah, but yeah. Joe Manganiello as Burke was very interesting because, like you said, you expect him to hang around a lot longer, being who he is. Yeah. And so I was just like, oh, that's it. I was like, his role in this film was short, but so damn sweet because it was fun. I'm sure he had a lot of fun on like the 1 or 2 days that he filmed for this movie.
He got to go run in the woods, play with the wolves. Yeah. The CGI wolf. Uh-huh. Yeah, that would have been a real fun time, I think. Drop in, drop out. Yeah. Be done. For sure.
So yeah, he's another one of those actors, like I say, kind of with Jack Quaid, that they bring in. I'm like, oh, cool, I like this guy. Oh, he's gone. Okay.
So quick. Mm-hmm. So quick. I thought he was going to last longer. I really did. Yeah. I thought he was going to be like the antagonist that was chasing down the animals while Okoye or Davis and Kate are running to help the animals. Yeah. But that is not what I thought. And given this was my first watch of the movie, I really had no expectations going in. Yeah. But I was kind of like, oh, that could have been a good story. But it's over. Yep. And now we move on.
We get to move on from Joe Manganiello to somebody else that steps in to... when one door closes, one swings open.
Oh, yes. I think you're going where I think. Yeah. Are you going where I think?
I'm pretty sure we're going the same direction here.
Okay. So, Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Yep. Let's just talk about him. He's on this little show that I think, Pake, you watch. I know I watch it. I think we both watch it, called The Walking Dead.
Mm-hmm.
Plays this
I've heard
character.
of it.
Yeah. Plays this character that no one likes called Negan. Except people do like him. They just don't want you to know that they like him.
Yeah.
When he opened his mouth playing this character of Harvey Russell, all I could think of was Negan.
Yeah. Oh, he's very Negan. Delivery, mannerisms, everything. Just Negan just stepped into this movie with a pair of glasses and a gun in his holster.
I don't really know what's happening, but I feel like Negan's here. It's like Negan in the pre-apocalypse. The swagger and the way he delivered all of his lines. Yep. It was Negan. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was talking about science experiments falling from the sky, and then at one point he was whistling, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm watching Negan. It just was so strange. One of the things, though, that I think one of the funniest moments in the whole movie. I mean, there were some funny moments, and a lot of them revolved around his lines because they were just really kind of suave and
I want to go for something, but I don't know. I don't think I have a good Negan impression. I don't think I do. So.
Oh, I think you should.
Because it was because he's doing the same thing. What was it? Finally, an order of yours that I can actually agree with.
I loved that Davis saved him.
Yeah.
When the plane was going down, he's fighting to put the parachute on him so that he can get him off the plane, and then suddenly he wakes up in the middle of it. Yeah. Just
holy shit.
And so Davis just pulls the ripcord and he goes flying. And I just like I said, it felt like it was Negan. Mm-hmm. It was like a backstory that we never got.
Yeah. Now the only thing with that scene leaves a sour taste in my mouth is
I know where you're going.
The CGI on that
was awful.
God, just like full CGI JDM and Rock in the air. I was like, that was a bad move. You should have gone with like a green screen or something for that. That would have worked way better. Because I just watched Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone last night, and it gave me that same feel like when they're playing Quidditch and like they just use like the full body CGI moving around. Is like it kind of takes you out of it. It's like in that movie came out in like 2001. It's like that's a lot more understandable. But this was like a huge blockbuster movie that came out in 2018. Like. You should have like the full body CGI stuff figured out way better than that by now.
Yes, you know better.
Mm-hmm.
You know better, and we're scolding you.
Yes.
For not doing it better. Yeah, I actually rewound that scene twice to make sure that it was the CGI because it was bad.
Yeah.
I thought it was just not good, and I was like, oh yeah, CGI, it is not good. And so, folks, there may be more comments about the CGI coming because I have some.
Yeah, I feel like that was the only one that really rubbed me the wrong way, but
it just was not good.
Yeah,
it would have been so much more impactful if it, like you said, they had used the green screen.
Yeah,
and had the actors actually in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they hope we wouldn't notice, but
we noticed.
We definitely noticed.
We're gonna notice. We have a whole podcast dedicated to watching movies like this. We're going to notice.
We're going to notice those little things. Yeah. I just feel I was connected to the character without even really knowing a lot about him because we never really got any backstory at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I just kept connecting to him like, you're Negan, pre-apocalypse.
Yeah, we just imagine that it's Negan. This is what he did before. And, okay, we're on board with him.
I did actually read an article with Jeffrey Dean Morgan where he was talking about filming this movie, and I guess he was actually filming Walking Dead around the same time, too. Yeah. And the director really wanted him to have that same swagger. Mm-hmm. But there was something dialed back about his portrayal of Harvey Russell versus how he plays Negan that I actually liked better.
Mm-hmm.
I was
Yeah,
kind of
he
like,
had that arrogance and like you said, that demeanor without like the over the top like comic book effect of it.
Yes. With what I considered to be a bit silly at times.
Mm-hmm.
This I didn't feel like it was silly. This I didn't feel like it was silly. I felt like it was portrayed really well. And yeah, I just kept waiting though for him to be bad.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just expected it.
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure, because usually in these action movies, they show you the characters and you try to form opinions early on, but there's almost always one that twists around that goes bad.
Yeah, and I feel like they probably did that on purpose with this movie. I think that was casting Jeffrey Dean Morgan, especially in the time when Negan was at his peak Neganness on Walking Dead.
Oh, goodness, yes.
And having him come off that same way, and even like the way we're introduced to the character, I think I will give the movie a lot of credit where it's due on that. That I think they purposely wanted people to believe, oh God, here we go, here's the villain. Mm-hmm. For him to just switch around and be on their side, to throw them the keys to the helicopter and be like, okay, you go, you go take care of this, because these guys obviously aren't getting the job done. And to actually have him like be on their team was a cool twist that I think really paid off.
It was unexpected. It was one of the few really unexpected things. Mm-hmm. Because I felt like at times things were a bit predictable. But this really threw me off because I didn't expect him to be good and not go bad. Because there's always that one, but not this time. So those are the main things that I had about the characters.
I have one more scene I want to talk about with Harvey Russell. For sure, before we kind of move on.
All right, I'm down.
Which is his last interaction with Brett Wyden there at the end.
Yes.
I love that whole scene so much. I mean, he's sitting there, he did you just run down 60 flights of stairs? Because those same 60 stairs I was about to have to go up to arrest you. But no, made it easy on him. But then he knows, he looks outside and sees what's going on. The building's crumbling. He's like, this guy's not going to survive out there. I don't want to deal with trying to transport him. So he was like, you know what? Just give me the computer. Give me all the evidence. And, Russell, I almost wanted to call him Negan. Or JDM. But yeah, but then, Russell shows that he is an animal guy as well. He actually is truly sorry that if anything bad has to happen to George, it's for the greater good, but he doesn't want to do it. And it's, you see he has the softer side towards animals too, to where he even takes Claire's rat from Brett and was like, I'll hold on to this because I don't want him to go out there with you.
With me?
Yeah. And saves the rat. But then, I love that, since when is complicity a crime? Exactly. Because he knows the guy's not going to make it very far. I don't think he expected him to make it that short of a distance. And where he just gets crushed by rubble the second he walks out the door, which I loved the reaction there. Oh, damn. That was a lot.
That was so good. It was so good. And I was actually happy because when they get these characters in there that are kind of a nuisance and really not, they're just not good people.
Yeah.
I've taken to call them the Nedries of the movies.
Yeah.
Well, he was one of my Nedries, and I was very happy to see him get his comeuppance. I was not shedding tears over him, and I was happy that the rat was able to survive.
Yeah. Even better. Just icing on the cake.
Exactly. I loved that scene as well. I'm glad that you brought it up. So I think we should get on to the monsters.
Yes.
Which I don't consider them monsters.
Yeah, I mean, they're genetically enhanced animals just doing what they do, going off of instinct, even though it's like instincts that are new to them from other things.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about George, Ralph, and Lizzie.
Yeah. I do want to start, you mentioned it in the behind the scenes about, being based off of the old Midway game. And so it's like a series of games. There's quite a few of them that kind of came out from the 80s. I think the first one came out as an arcade game in 86. And then I think they went into the early 2000s a little bit with different ones that came, through PlayStation and stuff. The one that I played the absolute most of was Rampage World Tour, which came out in 97 on the N64. That was my game. That was my Rampage game that I played a lot. But yeah, so I loved the game growing up. And basically what it is you play as these giant monsters destroying cities, eating people, fighting against the military who's trying to stop you. And that's the whole goal, is you just go like city to city and just tear it to the ground, and that's it. Like, you get points by how well you destroy things, you eat people, you eat different things, you fight tanks and choppers, and it's really cool that they took such a basic idea and was like, what if we figure out a way to make a movie out of it? And it didn't fail. Like, it was a fun movie for the most part.
It was a fun movie to watch, yeah.
And in the game, the biggest difference is the creatures are actually humans who are transformed into these monsters through different ways. But of course, we get the main three who are always in the games, which they nailed perfectly. You know, you have George the gorilla, Ralph the wolf, and Lizzie the lizard. They did change it up a little bit and made her more of an alligator or crocodile. You know, this time, because there was like a Croc the crocodile in one of the games. That's the thing, is they're so...
I saw that. I'm like, I didn't know why they didn't go that route.
Yeah, over the course of the games, there's a billion different one-off characters. There was like Ruby the lobster and like...
A lobster?
Yeah, and like all kinds of different like aliens and cyclops and...
Oh my goodness.
All kinds of different animals. They had a bunch of different kinds of rats. The main one being Larry the rat, which the rat, I think, in the space station was kind of at least an homage to that. And so
I think so too. I've read a couple of articles about that because I was curious after I learned a little bit more about the game.
Yeah, because I started to list all the other animals that have appeared, all the other monsters in the movies, but then I realized that list was going to be way too long, and I was like, I'll just wrap it up with, and a bunch of others. Maybe if they make sequels to this, I don't know if they ever will, but they have a lot of source material to pull from creative new monsters if they do it.
Well, you know, the thing is, one thing that I read was the Dr. Adkins at the beginning, she manages to get 3 of the canisters off the space station, and then break off into her own little pod to try to get back to Earth.
Yeah.
However, there were still like 5 of those canisters left on the space station, and it did blow up. However, those canisters could have made it to Earth.
Yeah.
Because they were built to survive that. So I don't know. Are they floating in space? Did they make it to Earth and we're going to see some new little animals or big animals coming along?
One of them floats off into space somewhere else and we wind up with one of the alien monsters.
Oh my goodness. That's taking it in such a different direction that, okay, I think I'm down. It's definitely cool for a popcorn movie.
Yeah. I wouldn't expect a whole lot from it, but I would definitely watch it.
No, you can't. You can't. It's one of those really cool Sunday afternoon watches that you watch it and you think, wow, that was decent. I'm happy. I've seen it. And that's about the end of it.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that in a bit. So we know that the explosion onto the space station and then also in that pod causes those canisters to land in 3 different places. San Diego at the preserve, which George gets exposed to. In Wyoming, where the wolves are, and then also in the Everglades, where I believe it was an alligator. Yeah. I'm going to go forward with it being an alligator. If it was a crocodile, super sorry.
I mean, alligators are a lot more a thing that's around here. Because, I mean, I live pretty close to Louisiana, and then I've driven through the Everglades in Florida, and it's alligator country around in this area more than...
Yeah, so the last canister landed in the Everglades. We don't really see anything about that for a while. It mostly focuses on the preserve and Wyoming, where the wolf is, Ralph. And they mutated. It seemed like George really, his biggest mutation was he got a lot bigger, he was more aggressive, and
he had a regeneration effect.
Yeah. And I guess, according to Kate, it was because the African spiny mouse DNA made it so that George could heal faster.
Yeah.
She brought that up at one point.
But yeah, the other ones did mutate a lot more. Because I even noticed, I had to like question when you see them all together, kind of near the end, in that last third when they're in the city in Chicago. And I was like, why is George so much smaller than the other two? Or really, it's more of why is Lizzie so much bigger than the others?
Ooh, she had all that time where she was hiding under the water.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe because I think she ate the canister. I don't think that she inhaled anything. I think she ate it.
That could be a good point, yeah. Because I know, George and Ralph were closer to the same size. But then I was thinking, wouldn't the gorilla be bigger than the wolf still, though? But it's a small thing. I don't know.
Was in those canisters, like the different makeup.
It's different. Yeah, it could be just randomly done. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Ralph had these weird, like, I didn't even realize that he could fly. Like he had those gliders.
It was like a flying squirrel. Yeah, where he kind of just like glide. And that was really cool because we see it the first time when he's taking out Killers R Us. Call them that. Because, they're looking at the deer run through. They're running from something. What are they running from? And then, bam, it comes in and takes Zamet. I think is his name.
He makes an entrance every time.
Snatches him up, runs up the, like, hillside, and then jumps and glides and circles back around and comes back at them and hits them until they're all done, except for the last one.
Yeah.
But
Burke, and then it's bye-bye Burke.
Yeah.
He also had these porcupine quills. It looked like and weird ear things. And he definitely didn't look like, oh, it's a supersized wolf. No, that's not what it was.
Yeah.
At all. And he took care of that helicopter very, very quickly.
Yeah. Quite a few of them. And once they got into Chicago, he's just jumping and snagging
running up buildings. And I couldn't believe it. Lizzie, oh my gosh. So I have to go there because I just have to. So I know she had these boar tusks and these fish gills and things, but she had a spiked tail. And the whole time I was looking at her, I'm thinking, oh, Ankylosaurus. You look like an Ankylosaurus.
I know, it's so funny that you went there because that's exactly... Because I don't look at your notes because I know you put your notes and stuff on our like shared Google documents. I don't look at your notes until after all of mine are completely done and compiled. So I thought it was hilarious that you made that connection because that's exactly when my notes, as I said, Lizzie getting to make the most badass official entrance ever. Said looking like an Ankylosaurus alligator with tusks and gills with frills like the Dilophosaurus.
Yes!
Such a cool creature design, yeah.
I loved it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this isn't a dinosaur movie, but it is. Because she just, those frills and...
alligators are technically dinosaurs.
They are.
Yeah. They're reptiles.
They're in the family, yeah.
They've lived for millions of years in different aspects and places.
Oh, yeah. It was great. I'm so glad that you went there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just, me with dinosaurs. I just went there. I couldn't help it. But it's cool that you also went there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was one thing, though, about George going, when he went into the grizzly bear enclosure, I wondered if maybe, I don't know if he was hungry, or if maybe he was just scared. Because he knew something was going on with himself, and he was afraid he might hurt his pack or his group, his little tribe that he had with the other gorillas. And I didn't know, because he was so smart to begin with.
Yeah.
I wondered if he, realized that something was wrong and he needed to try to get away from his group because he didn't want to accidentally hurt them.
Yeah.
Because even though he did get more aggressive, I still felt like the old George was in there somewhere. The other two, no, not so much.
They're just wild animals with no sense of intelligence like an ape would, and...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of intelligence. And also the human contact.
Yeah.
I think that had a lot to do with it. Wow. That was one of my favorite parts of the movie, was the monsters.
Oh, yeah.
It usually is, but this one, I really connected with a lot of what they tried to do.
Yeah.
And the CGI with Lizzie, I actually thought was better than the CGI for Ralph.
Yeah. Lizzie, I think, looked incredible. Especially, I think the scene where Davis is kind of running through these, like, you know, across like a wall of like a house that had toppled over, and you see the eye following him under the wind, like through the windows, and then like it's so cool.
So good. So cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think how Lizzie makes her entrance is just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no one had seen her. Like, no one knew she existed. They knew about the wolf. They knew about the gorilla. They did not know about her.
Yeah.
And she just comes up the river and knocks that boat over. And I think Kate even looks down and says, I see something in the water. And it's actually in my quotes, but I'm going to read it now because I just think I have to. But Kate says, there's something in the water. And then Davis says, I was just thinking the only thing that's missing right now is a giant crocodile. Yeah. Priceless.
And I love his line he says after that when she emerges and comes out, and he goes, the only thing he can say about it is, oh, that sucks.
It's true, though. I mean, really? I mean, they've got all this stuff going on, and then all of a sudden there's this alligator, crocodile, ankylosaurus, hybrid, fish, Dilophosaurus. I mean, I can't merge all those words fast enough to be able to come up with some sort of name for it.
Yeah. Yeah, then we kind of get the face-off. I mean, we might as well talk about the big
we have to
battle among all of this is, you know, between Davis and George, who's now, you know, back to normal as far as the aggression factor is taken out of him, and he's able to work with Davis. Then you kind of get this, you know, they're both working really well. I loved, you know, we get Ralph bouncing around off the buildings and flying in at him. And he just times it. It's pretty lucky timing, honestly. I don't think it was planned as well as he wants to. You know, he probably would want to say, "Oh, I planned that." Sure, but it worked out really great with Ralph kind of soaring right into Lizzie's mouth, and then
she just bites his head off,
pulled his head off, and ate it, and was like, "All right." So it was like, "Okay, one down, cool, let's go."
I know, poor Ralph. I felt like, you know, he played his part. He did his job so well, but then it's like, who do you want George to have to face in the end? Do you want him to face this alligator who's supersized, bigger than him, way bigger, or Ralph, the wolf, who's can glide? I don't know, but it got taken care of very quickly. Yeah. Ralph came to an end as lunch.
Yeah, it's like, okay, there he goes. And then I loved George coming in on Lizzie. I thought it was really badass. Just like pulled one of her tusks off and then just starts stabbing at her with
her with it.
I was like, okay.
I couldn't believe it either.
Yeah, that was really cool. And then Davis comes in and just throws like a whole bunch of grenades into one of her gills. And I was like, that's great. That's a great move. And it's like, shame it didn't actually do much of anything for you. But, you know, it's great. Bunch of missiles from the helicopter also didn't really do much of anything.
No. Every time you think something's going to take her down, it wasn't until George, who was impaled at that time, had been impaled, came to the rescue.
Yeah, it's that regenerating gene that really helped there a lot. Keep him going. A pole through the eyeball into the brain. That might just do the trick.
Yes. You know, it takes me back to Walking Dead, and you know, you have to kill him by spiking him in the head. It's the same thing for these prehistoric hybrid animals. They have to be, you know, the brain has to be shut down in order for them to die. And you know, though, George has one moment even before all of this that I also adored.
Oh, yeah.
And it was on top of the building.
Yeah, talking about, like, since the aggression was gone, well, how did that happen?
Well, the aggression went away because there was this serum, I think it was called R19, and Kate and Davis had gotten some, which they had to turn over to Claire, but unbeknownst to Claire, Kate kept a vial of it. And at one point, they were on top of the building, and Claire gets all feisty because Kate just decides to put the R19 in Claire's bag and push her at George. Who scoops her up and drops her so conveniently into his mouth. and there was comeuppance for her.
Yeah.
And that made me so happy.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't stand her. Malin Ackerman did a really good job.
Oh, yeah. She's always great.
Yeah, she was spot on for that character. I think she just nailed being the smarmy, cutthroat, tough as nails, queen of business. So I thought she did a great job.
So yeah, I think that kind of covers, I think, most of the creatures. Other than I noticed at the very end of the movie, right before the credits hit, I was like, there's a guy that just totally steps into George's hand and lets him, like, lift him out of the window.
Oh, I know.
Put him on the ground. And I was like, as sweet as that is, I was like, man, that's a lot of blind trust for this giant gorilla who you just saw destroy half the city.
Yes. I'm not sure that I would have trusted him. You'd have to, you know what? It brings me to another movie we saw recently that we talked about. I guess you have to look in the eyes. Mm-hmm. And then you know.
Yeah, which they did, because when he was really aggressive, they were just like black and dark. Yes. And then when you see him kind of come to, it was that bright blue joy in his eyes. Or not really joy, but, you know, friendliness and compassion. Yeah. Like, you know, the good stuff came back, and you see that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting. I did a little bit of research on the game versus the movie, and you've already brought up some great points. So I thought I would bring up just a couple that you didn't bring up.
All right.
Before we get to production notes. Because I have a few production notes that are actually pretty good. So you mentioned that the monsters were actually human prior to them mutating. And they fear, some of the fans actually had speculated that Ralph's ability to glide with, like, the flying squirrel, like wings, might be a reference to how the monsters in the game were capable of gliding by flapping their arms. Now, I've never played this game, so is that something that's actually real?
I haven't played it since I was a kid, so I don't know. I don't remember that for sure. It's been a while, so I don't recall that, but I only played like 2 of the games for the most part. I haven't played the whole series, so maybe at some point that did happen.
Well, you know what? Anyone out there who's listening that may have played the games and can confirm that for us, we'd be happy if you would let us know in the comments so that we'll know.
Yeah.
Check us out on Facebook and you can leave a comment. Let us know.
Yeah, we'd like to hear.
Energine is the company name in the movie. It's essentially Scum Labs, and it's spelled SCUMM. That sounds really sketchy. It's essentially the same thing, creating the rampaging monsters because of genetic experiments that either went awry or other accidents caused leaked fumes, etc. And shitty CEOs.
Well, yeah, in the game, I mean, they're not hiding anything from the fact that, like, it's supposed to be like, oh yeah, it's this, like, real sketchy organization, corporation thing, because, yeah, Scum Labs, run by Dr. Demonic, like DEMONIC, like, you know, or, you know, Mr. You know, like,
this was definitely developed in the 80s.
Yeah.
Had to have been. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I feel like we talked a lot. You know, you brought up all the really cool points about the game versus movie, so I don't think we have to revisit it.
Cool.
So that brings us to production notes.
All right.
And there were a few things. Brad Peyton is a Canadian director, writer, and producer, and he is somewhat known for directing films that star Dwayne Johnson, including another of my personal favorites, San Andreas, and Journey to the Mysterious Island. He also was behind Netflix's zombie series Daybreak, which I really liked a lot, but it got canceled. I'm still not over at Netflix. We talked a bit about Jack Quaid, which is cool that he was in this movie. And regarding the script, many were considered, including one that was much more of a direct video game to movie adaptation. The monsters were mutated humans, etc. But Ryan Engel wanted to make a love letter to monster movies he grew up watching, like Jaws and Jurassic Park, while showing the animals as the antagonists, not the heroes. How many of us out there would love to be able to do something that's like an homage to the things that we loved growing up?
Mm-hmm.
The filmmakers decided to make George an albino gorilla to show the damage to his body better, and also to separate the movie so it's not looked at as a King Kong ripoff.
Okay.
Which I thought was cool. And George is the only animal to be played by an actor. He was played by Jason Liles. Ralph and Lizzie were created entirely through keyframe animation.
Cool.
As far as a sequel, there are no plans at this time. The Rock is a very busy actor.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if he had time in his schedule based on what I had read today, they would probably try to make a sequel.
Yeah. I'd be down for it.
I think that brings us to quotes, right?
Yes, it does.
I have just a couple. I already had talked about one or two of them, but this scene is probably my favorite scene in the entire movie. It has no action whatsoever, but I just really liked it. And it was a conversation between Harvey Russell, Davis Okoye, and Kate Caldwell. And it's when we first meet Harvey. And he says, "Hell of a day, huh? Science experiments falling from the sky. A giant gorilla on the loose. Just the kind of exciting shit we here at the government tend to notice." And Davis responds with, "Where's George? I need to see him, and if you're thinking of putting him on that plane, it's going to be a big mistake." And Harvey responds with, "I think we'll be all right." Kate is trying to diffuse the situation by saying, "Okay, let's all take a breath." And Davis says, "I said I want to see George." And Kate says, "Or we could get in each other's faces and see who's the toughest." Followed by Harvey saying, "Brother, I'm going to prance myself right out on a limb and guess that no one's ever accused you of being a people person." And Davis says, "Well, how about you take these cuffs off and find out yourself, brother?" And then Harvey says, "I'll see you on board." And then Kate kind of ends the scene with, "It's so weird that he didn't take your cuffs off."
Mm-hmm.
I just love that whole exchange between the three of them because I feel like she's trying to make the situation better. Neither of them were listening to her. And they just go off on this tangent of, who's the tough guy.
Yeah.
So I found that really funny. I also liked one where they were talking, it was a little bit after that, and Harvey says, "We may not be the brightest bulbs in the room, but we're doing all right, especially when we've got another one of your little science experiments running around." And Davis says, "What do you mean another one?" And Harvey says, "Oh, you didn't know about the 30-foot wolf?" And that's when they start to realize that this is a much bigger issue than what they had thought. And the last one I'm going to read is Claire's comeuppance scene.
Yeah.
She gets all feisty and says, "Get away from me. Get your hands off me. What the hell are you doing?" And Kate puts the R19 in her bag and says, "Feeding the monster to the gorilla." And Claire responds with, "Oh shit," as she falls into George's mouth.
Yeah, that was great.
Bye, Claire. So those were some of my favorite moments. I mean, there were so many things that Harvey Russell said that I could have just written probably 15 to 20 quotes of his.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you have, Pake?
All right. So mine, I've got, and I realize, they're all just, in order as they appear in the movie. But yeah, one, not necessarily for the quote, but from my reaction to it, is at the very beginning, because I'm pretty sure it was Claire that was on the radio talking to the scientist that was in the
It was.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, she says, "Doctor, either you come home with my research or you don't come home at all." And I remember, just without even thinking, in my, best Scott Pilgrim voice, I was just like, that's so evil.
Oh, yes, it was very evil.
Wow. But yeah. I liked I'm not sure this exact quote, but I got close. Where Nelson, after talking to Davis, after he kind of drives off, he's like, "Girls like him. Maybe I should shave my head."
Yes, I had written that down in consideration for one of my quotes, but I took it out because I felt like I had that whole scene. I'm glad you brought it up.
That was fun. I like Harvey Russell's line of, "You see, when science shits the bed, I'm the guy they call to change the sheets."
Oh, yes. See?
It's a good one.
But I can still see him as Negan. Like, I can see. It's funny because it's not only how he says it, it's what he's saying that is so Negan-esque.
Yep. I get one that's not really a funny one at all, but I thought it was really poignant and, like, was really cool. It was Davis is going kind of his background and where he found George. And Kate asks him, "What happened to the poachers?" And his response, he goes, "Well, they shot at us, and they missed. I shot back. I didn't." And I thought that was really cool.
I'm glad he took them out.
Yeah. And then really kind of the last one I have is Davis is taking out these two soldiers so they can go to the helicopter. And, he gives them this whole spiel. It's like, "I'm going to knock you out, and then I'm going to choke you out until you piss yourself." And then, in front of the lady, is "Don't make me. Oh, this is exactly what I didn't want to do." But I love is that last guy, the quote that I have is of the last guy struggling as he's choking him out. And he goes, "It's a big arm. Don't fight it."
You always bring the funny ones. You always do. That was a great one, too.
Yeah. And I did have the last one that we already talked about because I really loved Kate Caldwell's feeding the monster to the gorilla line. It
was so great. So good.
But yeah.
That is awesome. Well, you know what? That brings us to our rankings.
All right.
Yeah, and I'm going to go first.
Yes,
just because I always go first. So I'm going to go first this time. I like this movie as a whole. I liked Lizzie the most.
Yeah.
I loved her CGI. I thought she was really well done. Wish they'd put a little more effort into Ralph. I did not love the skydiving CGI at all.
Yeah.
There was no real backstory to connect you to the characters, at least not one. They didn't take the time to build anything, really. But overall, I enjoyed watching it. So at the end of the day, I'm going to leave it with a 7.
Cool.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, definitely. I was kind of right there in the same boat, all the same reasoning, where, it's a good action flick and it's a lot of fun. And so I ended up going 7.2. So I'm kind of hovering around that same
close.
area. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's earned that.
Uh-huh.
If they made a sequel, I would definitely watch it. I want to see what they do, what other creatures they can dream up.
Yeah.
Because I really liked Lizzie especially. So, like, can you bring me another water prehistoric looking creature?
Yeah.
I'm totally down for that.
Be cool. All right, Daphne, we got a little bit of feedback this week. We always appreciate some fun feedback.
Yes, we do.
So the one comment written in we do have from our good friend Damien, and he's writing in about Love and Monsters after we covered that. So
yeah,
always love a follow-up.
Yeah, me too. Want me to read it?
Go for it.
So Damien says, "I'm happy to hear you guys enjoyed this movie so much. I'll definitely add it to my list of must-see movies. Also excited to hear you'll be covering The Towering Inferno in the future. That was on my list of suggestions for the podcast. I'm confident that Pake will enjoy it."
Yeah. So I guess we've made that promise like 3 different times now. So it's definitely going to happen at some point.
Yeah. It's on the list. We're going to work it in. Mm-hmm. It's cool because I actually responded to Damien on Facebook and let him know that if he had any other suggestions, that he should definitely send them to us.
Uh-huh.
As should any of our listeners.
Yes.
Because you never know if it's on our list or not. And every once in a while, someone will suggest something that we hadn't really thought about.
Mm-hmm.
So we definitely appreciate it.
There's a whole slew of monster movies and disaster movies and stuff out there. So
yeah.
if you know something that you think we might enjoy, send it our way, please.
And there are some cool ones that are coming out that we're going to probably cover too.
Yes.
And we have a couple of new ones. And Love and Monsters is not the only new movie that we are planning to cover. So
yeah,
we've talked about how it brings a different energy when we get to cover something new. So it's always exciting when we hear about something that's going to be released on streaming.
Yeah. All right, and we do have one voicemail as well this week from our good buddy Steve.
We do.
Always a Steve voicemail, and I love him for that.
I know. And it wouldn't be the same if he didn't send us a message. So I'm really glad that he did this week. So let's hear what Steve had to say about Rampage.
Hey, Pake and Daphne, it's Steve. And all right, here we go. Rampage. It's I've just watched the opening with the little, I want to know what CRISPR is. CRISPIR. Yeah. Hey, that's Jack Quaid, from The Boys, looking a bit more rugged than he does as Huey, but apparently just as jumpy as Huey. So the news lady said that the gorilla escaped, but apparently they're keeping him in isolation and just not telling anybody. Okay. We're not meant to question anything in this movie, right? Just kind of like Commando, turn your brain off and watch it. Okay, so let me get this straight, crazy lady. Your plan is to draw all of the creatures to your building. There's an hour left in this movie. There's no way that what did she say? Genetic edited super ape didn't survive this plane crash. Did he just do the pelvic thrust thing, throwing those keys and that phone at, he sure did. Twice. Okay. Just a quick question that I thought about as I'm watching this. Did they not realize that 3 canisters fell? I mean, you think with all the satellite tracking they had, they would know there's a third animal out there. Maybe they do, and just the movie hasn't shown us that yet. I don't know. Speak of the devil, and there it is. Legitimately laughed and snorted when The Rock said, well, that sucks. Okay, this plan with the helicopter is the equivalent of jumping in the falling elevator. Like, oh, we'll jump right before it gets to the bottom. Of course, the wolf flies. Aw, it looked like George helped somebody off that building right there at the end. All right, so, it ended up being a fun movie to watch. Just don't try to think about it too much. All right, guys, talk to you later.
Yay. Love a Steve play-by-play feedback. Voicemail.
Yes.
It's always fun.
And you know what he was talking about with the pelvic thrust was Jeffrey D. Morgan.
Yes. It's not Rocky Horror. It's Negan, baby.
It's Negan. It's a Neganism. For anyone who watches The Walking Dead, which you know that we do. So, of course, you'll have heard in this podcast how much we look back on the characters' mannerisms and how they compare to Negan from The Walking Dead.
Yes. And Steve, I hope you got your CRISPR answer listening to this episode. I did the best I could with it. I'm not a friggin' scientist. I'm not a biologist, but I think I have a good idea of what it is. So any scientists and biologists out there who do listen to this, if I royally screwed it up, then make sure to write us in and let me know what I missed and school us, educate us.
Absolutely. We are not above being educated about something that we may have missed or may not understand completely. So we definitely appreciate if you guys want to send us some corrections or anything. Be kind.
Yeah. Yes. Always be nice. I'm fragile. All right. Let's get to some shout outs and stuff. What else is going on in the podcast universe surrounding us? Strange Indeed. I've been, pimping that out a lot lately. And so I did one more episode for a little bit, and then I'm taking a couple of weeks off, and then I'll be jumping back in. I'll let you guys know what's going on in there. The next show, now that we've wrapped up The Haunting of Bly Manor, they'll be covering The Stand, the new miniseries over on CBS All Access. Rima and our good friend Ben, who you'll get to hear plenty of very soon.
Yes.
And so they'll be doing The Stand. I will be jumping in for about 3 episodes or so I won't stay away from that podcast. I'll be jumping in and talking a couple episodes of The Stand with them. But as kind of a bridge between Bly Manor and The Stand, Mike Flanagan show to a Stephen King adaptation. Best way to do that is to talk about a Mike Flanagan directed Stephen King adapted movie. So we did Dr. Sleep, and it was a blast. We had a really good time. That's out now, so go check that out. And yeah, Also, I've got some more podcast work to do coming up soon, so be on the lookout for it. It should be coming out sometime next week over on Panels to Pixels. Me, Steve, and Ben will be getting together to do a little roundtable discussion on my favorite movie in the whole world, which is Scott Pilgrim versus the World. And that's going to be just a huge nerd fest between me and Ben and Steve on that movie, so that'll be a lot of fun.
That is going to be such a fun listen. I can't wait until it's out because it's going to be great.
Yeah, and so Mark is taking a little break from Panels to Pixels over, this week, but he's still doing his podcast, Adrenaline Cinema, and the next episode they got coming is Steve is also going to be over there, and they're doing Commando. As Steve mentioned, watching Commando recently, that's why, because they're covering it on Adrenaline Cinema.
Yes, that is for sure.
And then, Daphne, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody what's up next here on Run for Your Lives?
So this week we have the second movie of our 2-week Brad Peyton, Dwayne Johnson double feature. We are joined by our good friend Ben to break down San Andreas, the American disaster film that was released on May 29th, 2015.
So listen to the podcast universe shout-outs that I mentioned. You get lots of me, get lots of Rima, get lots of Ben, lots of Steve. We're all everywhere, so check it out. Lots of fun podcasts. And if you want to send any theories or feedback for San Andreas or any other movies that we've covered here to this podcast, you can hit us up at facebook.com/runforyourlivespodcast or email us at runforyourlivespodcast@gmail.com. Twitter at RFYL Podcast, and Instagram at Run For Your Lives Podcast. If you're enjoying the show, go ahead and tell your friends, share the love. We are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Audible, everywhere. Just everywhere. We're on YouTube. Any place you can find a podcast, we are probably there. And then if you're checking out on Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave us a review. Give us 5 stars. It's always fun. And then if you want to send somebody to check us out or don't want to deal with all of those links, just go to runforyourlivespodcast.com and you'll find links to all of our socials, all of our podcast players, anything that you need for Run For Your Lives.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the end of our show. Yeah. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. We always appreciate your feedback, and we're happy that you're enjoying the show as much as we are putting it together for you. So with that, I am Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And if you have to run from a genetically mutated wolf or alligator, you better run for your lives.
Bye-bye.